Hi everyone, today we'll talk about remote mob programming. And just as a reminder, maybe you can get past in the archive. Yesterday we were talking about ideas from this book, which was one of the books I wrote together with Robert, which describes the way Arkency works remotely and asynchronously. So that was like kind of our invention based on other remote companies, but when we started there was really not that many remote companies to be influenced from or get inspired. But we took a lot of inspiration from open source projects and the way their teams are built and mostly how they collaborate asynchronously. So that was the key in the async part of this book, of our process. And today I would like to review some ideas from mob programming and the way how mob programming can be done remotely. And there's a book called Remote Mob Programming. So this live video is like a review of this book, but mostly like review of the ideas. I like this book, but to be honest, it's super short. It's 30 pages, literally. It's 30 pages, including some additional resources. So there is not much in the book. If you like short books with just main points, this is okay for you, and this is okay for me. I learned something from this book, and I like it because it's short and I was able to consume it quite quickly. And at the same time, it did inspire me to at least to make this live video, and also for some of the things that we do at Arkency. For those of you who don't know, usually maybe you're familiar with pair programming. So pair programming is the way when two people sit together in front of one computer and they pair, which means they work really together. They discuss together. One person types, the other person kind of navigates. It's a very specific way of working. It's not for everybody. I used to work in this way before I started Arkency. I worked in London in a company called Resolver Systems, and we paired all the time. Like it was a full-time pairing. Very exhausting, very intense, but I learned really a lot. So it's a good way of creating software. Not that popular overall. So that's pair programming. Then we have mob programming, mob like M-O-B. This means that we are working usually in front of one screen, but there is usually more people. So pair programming can be seen as a specific use case, specific situation when you have a mob programming with only two people, but mob programming is usually meant to be like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 people working together on one screen. And I think the main idea behind mob programming was to be, so mob programming was something to be done in the office. And we've done mob programming at Arkency maybe only a few times. One of them was when we were having a co-working kind of day, co-working session here in my place, and some of the Arkency people came here and we were pairing, well actually mobbing, I think there were 5 people, 5 of us, and we were mobbing on a big screen, a big TV. We were just moving the laptop around, so the keyboard around, it was connected to the screen, and we were working together on a sample application for our workshops, for our domain-driven design workshops. So we were creating the initial design, we were adding tests, so we were doing TDD together with mob programming. Another situation was on one of our client projects where there were 2 of us doing the mob, but I will cover this a little bit later as I go through this book. So mob programming is like many people working together, and it has some consequences. The intuitive one is that we waste time by doing this, because instead of 5 people working like concurrently, you have 5 people working at the same time. But this also brings some benefits. So there are good sides and bad sides, and by intuition I like this idea, but it's not something that we do like every day. So there's some introduction. I will go through this book like the way. So there's this nice quote. We came to realize that remote mob programming is superior to anything we ever tried before. And this is written by three guys who, as I looked at them, they have really extensive experience. So they're senior programmers, and they work at InnoQ, which is a fairly popular software company. So they did compare it to the office work, to some other ideas, and they still claim, and also for normal remote work without mob programming, and they still claim that this is superior. So this is interesting to see. And they were doing remote mob programming full-time every day for over a year. So 1 year is enough of time, I think, to have some conclusions. And that was 1 year without daily stand-ups, as they say. That's an interesting consequence. When you have a mob programming, you don't need daily stand-ups because everyone knows what was done. Everyone is on the same page all the time. So stand-ups not needed. 1 year without waiting for code reviews. So at Arkency, we don't really do those mandatory code reviews, which are so popular at other companies. That's another topic to discuss at some point. Actually, this is a very controversial thing that we don't do that as mandatory things. So maybe one day I will do the live video about that. Let me know if you're interested. But other companies, they seem to construct their processes around code reviews. So there's always some kind of waiting. So you create code, but you're not allowed to push the code to production. You have to wait for code review. And 1 year without handovers before holidays. So that's another interesting concept in software companies. When you have someone working on a feature, but then they need to go, or they plan to go for a holiday, and they didn't have time to finish the feature, someone else need to take over. So we handle that at Arkency by collective ownership, but it's not really fully solved this way. So I can understand why with mob programming this makes sense. 1 year at home without feeling alone. So they're addressing this problem of remote work when it is a problem. Actually, you work in isolation, and right now many of us in our industry are working remotely full-time for the first time in their life, and there are lots of things that you can learn when you do this. So that was more like an intro. The first rule, they say, the first chapter, remote everybody. This is also important for our async remote book. This is we don't claim that this is needed, required, but it's also important. As they rightly say and point out, when there is a group of people working remotely and a group of people working in the office, there is information asymmetry, and this leads to problems. Camera always on. For me, this is controversial. I wouldn't like to work with this environment where you have always camera on. Not that I have anything to hide, but I just don't think this is important for programming activities that we are connected with cameras all the time. I'm not sure. I know there is a whole psychology behind detecting what is my body language, what is my face saying right now. I just don't think this is worth it. So, but I didn't really try the way they describe, and they say we activate our cameras all the time. They say it felt strange at first, but after a few days it became natural. It gives a sense of presence in the team, almost like working in the same room together. Okay, I think they try to simulate the office. This is a concept I try to avoid. I think when you go remotely, you don't need to simulate the office. You have more better metaphors right now. For example, open source projects. They have regular on-site meetings, which probably helps. We work together on-site once a month. That's not something that we do at Arkency at our remote collaboration. So we don't do mobs, but we do remote and async remote. And sometimes it happens that there are regular on-site meetings, but definitely not once a month. It's probably more rare. And some projects probably are never on-site together. So interesting idea, but I'm not a huge fan. Don't think this is necessary. But if there is this luxury of really living close to each other, then definitely it's worth a try. At Arkency, we have clients from the US, from Denmark, from Germany. It's not so easy to work on site all the time, or even once a month. That's probably difficult. Same time, we mob 6 hours a day, which means they require people working the same time. Not something that would be easily doable at Arkency. So I'm just reviewing those ideas, and I'll try to apply them to Arkency. Not that this is important for you, but I just try to compare the ideas. And for us, the async part is crucial. So our processes are based on the fact that we can work at different times. Async means working at different times. And this is where I will make a short digression. We did try mob programming, and they call it remote mob programming. So what I would like to explore, and even after reading this book, short book as a reminder, I would like to explore the concept of async remote mob programming, or just async mob programming, where people can work together, but they can connect to the session, to the mob session, whenever they are working, whenever there's their scheduled working time, and they can disconnect mostly at any time, and there will still be some other people working together. So you can imagine there's a group of people is working, like 5 people, then one person disappears, then this comes back, but then this disappears, then those 3 goes for a lunch break, then one person is working, then no one is working, then someone pops up and appears. So I like this idea, and we've been trying this with one project with 2 people, so it was more like async pairing than async mob. And it was very interesting. So all the things that were mentioned here as superior, no stand-ups, no code reviews, no handovers, I can imagine they were working for us similarly. But definitely, if they can allow, they have this luxury of having people 6 hours a day together, this is fine. Now I'm recording this video during the time of when there is a lockdown on the economy, and people are forced, in most of the countries, people are forced to stay at home, and they are usually interrupted by the family and by other stuff. So probably 6 hours a day with such requirement, this is difficult. I'll skip this one. We always look at the same shared screen. That makes sense. That's probably part of the definition of a mob. So probably they need to avoid looking at your own machines during that time, so that people are not I don't know how, like, the focus should be there, I believe. So even if someone else is typing, then you are the navigator, navigate the driver. They have 10-minute intervals. We rotate every 10 minutes. I think that's very similar to what we did during our mob session, and we were rotating, I think, 5 minutes maybe even. So usually it's a short time, just to keep the dynamics of the work. We have a team of 4. Okay, so it's a small team. This is also kind of aligned with my concept of there is a number above which the team is not really more productive. So I don't really believe in 20 programmer teams for most of the projects. At some point, adding more programmers just makes the whole communication more difficult. At some point, you are slowing down by adding more programmers. That's what I want to say. But it depends on the culture of your organization. Group decisions. So this is interesting. Like in software engineering, you constantly compare different alternatives and decide for one. Reversing decisions often expensive. Group decisions are superior over individual decisions. In remote mob programming, all decisions are group decisions, and this way we minimize technical debt. That's a bold claim, but I believe that there is a reduction of technical debt. So most of the software projects, at some points, they just basically slow down to almost like not moving at all, because there is a technical debt, and things are always worked around. The morale goes down. You are always irritated by how the code base is working, and probably, like, I see this with pairing, which we practice a lot at Arkency. 2 people jump to work together. It's not constant, not all the time, but very frequent such sessions, and they help understand the code bases together and what is wrong, what is bad, how we can improve that. They also claim that there is a constant momentum. So I think what they mean here is that we frequently get into a rewarding flow. So it's like a group flow, because it's not so easy to procrastinate. It's not so easy to go somewhere and Google something and then you forget how you ended up, looking at some random website because you just interrupted your flow. So with group working, there is less temptation to stop working, and this might be actually a big time saver. Learn from the team. This was huge when I was pairing all the time in that company, which I mentioned. So we get better by learning from each other. With mob programming, onboarding only takes weeks, not years. I can imagine this is true. So basically the knowledge transfer is much faster. And I remember when I was working in this company, there were at some moments 6 of us, 8 of us. Some people were using different IDs. So within, I don't know, half a year, I was able to be quite fluent with Vim, with Emacs, with whatever PyCharm I think was that in Python. And we were able to quickly learn new stuff. So there's like 5 people, and by pairing with them or mobbing, you learn from everyone. So there is more collaboration overall. Trust. We build trust by communicating actively. So they explain this way. We all work remotely. The client does not see us working, so there might be a missing trust. So management has a natural fear of losing control over the team. Also, there is an inherent doubt of a team's productivity with all team members working on the same issue at the same time. That's obvious, right? When you see 5 people working on one thing, you can imagine that there is something, there is a waste. So while management showed us some trust in advance, eventually we earned it through continuous and sincere communications and always delivering what we committed to. I think this is similar to what we call over-communication in our book. So it might be easier when you do it as a group. Okay, so there's ecological aspect, save the planet. We don't travel, so 0 emissions. We can see that currently in the current situation, where I think the Earth gets better because we all stay home, and we enjoy more quality with time with our families. I think that's mostly because of the remote, less than about remote programming. And the rest of the book is more about setup. So they're using video conferencing, what kind of microphone is important, camera. They're using Miro for whiteboarding, and that mostly. So quite a short book, nice book, just 30 pages. It's worth having. I bought it on Amazon. It's worth having this with you. Yeah, I think that's it. So thank you for your attention. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments regarding async remote work or mob programming, which I'm not an expert, but I have some ideas how it can work. And I've tried it a few times. I would like to try it more, so maybe I will try some of our projects to work on them. I don't know, maybe I know some people are coding on Twitch, so they're streaming their work. In a way, this is a mob, because I know that some people are watching them working and they can suggest what to do. So maybe this is also an idea. So maybe we would be connecting some ideas of, you know, remote mob programming, async remote, streaming as in Twitch. Streaming, some open source programmers are streaming their work, so there is definitely something to discover in this area. Okay, thanks for watching, thanks for your attention, and see you next time.